What if all F1 drivers raced in the same car? It's a question we fantasize about all the time. Finally, we'd have some understanding of who was the best. And incredibly, this has already happened. Back in 1984, there was a race where all of the drivers were in the same car. And most of those drivers were past or present F1 drivers, with 9 world champions and 2 future world champions. And one of those future world champions was Aryton Senna, who just started his Formula 1 career a few months earlier. Senna was just a month away from one of his breakthrough drives, that one that was in the wet at Monaco.
Has come up through the field. He started in 13th place and he's now 7th.
This was a race that he probably should have won if it wasn't for it being red flagged. Anyway, when all of these F1 drivers got together and raced the same cars, Senna blew them away. So I wanted to dig a bit deeper to see what actually happened during this race. I wanted to understand Senna's driving technique at this early stage in his career and understand how this very young driver destroyed a very experienced field. The race was called the Race of Champions, a name you might be familiar with already, but it wasn't the same thing as it is now. It was held in 1984 and was organised to celebrate and gain some publicity for the new Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. F1 had stopped running on the Nordschleife after Lauda's fiery accident in 1976. By the way, that isn't Lauda's car, it's this one just here. And so a new, safer circuit was built to bring F1 back to the Nürburgring, which would return later in 1984 as the European Grand Prix. So the organisers had an amazing idea. They had a brand new circuit. But before we get into Senna's incredible driving and how he won this race, I must first introduce you to the identical cars that they used, the mighty Mercedes 190E.
190 and fuel-injected 190E.
Now, Mercedes, who were a partner on this project, wasn't going to let F1 drivers compete in a bog-standard 190E. So they needed to make a few modifications. And look what they came up with. I don't know about you, but I personally think these things are very, very cool. For safety, these 190Es were fitted with a roll cage and safety harnesses, but they also made some changes to make these road cars a bit more racy. This included lowering the chassis, lowering the gear ratios, and replacing the exhaust system to be louder and more race ready. The cars were fitted with Pirelli racing tyres, but aside from that, they had no other performance parts. And because all the cars were the same, they painted half of them in silver and half in this black-blue colour. Although they also added the drivers' names all over the car so you could tell who was driving. And I thought these cars were so cool that I looked to see how much they cost to buy one now. But most of them were actually fitted back to factory spec and sold as regular cars. However, Niki Lauda's car was left in race condition and was sold in 2023 for 308,000 Swiss francs. That's £270,000. Next, the organisers needed to sign up the drivers. And for me, this is the most surprising part of this whole event. Formula 1 drivers, by nature, are pretty competitive, so convincing them to all race in the same cars, where their pure skill would be on show, and where they couldn't hide behind being in different F1 cars, was quite an achievement. Mercedes started by inviting all of the living F1 champions. At the time, there were 14. Fangio, Phil Hill, Surtees, Hume, Brabham, Stewart, Fittipaldi, Lauda, Hunt, Andretti, Scheckter, Jones, Piquet and Rosberg. And a grid like that would have been incredible, but not all of them were available. Andretti and Fittipaldi were busy at the Indy 500. Stewart and Piquet weren't cleared by their contracts, and Fangio tapped out for health reasons, as he was 72 at the time. Still, 9 F1 champions in the same race is amazing. And to fill the remaining slots, other F1 race winners such as Reutemann, Lafiti, Prost, De Angelis and Sterling Moss came in. Then some local drivers were also invited to fill the gaps, but there was still one place left to make it 20. So the organisers were searching for the right driver when Emerson Fittipaldi recommended a young Brazilian who was only 4 races into his F1 career and unproven, in F1 at least. And his name was Aryton Senna.
Hello, my name is Aryton Senna.
Senna was 24 years old at the time and had only finished 2 of the first 4 races of the 1984 season. And now he was going up against 9 F1 world champions and many race winners. But Senna saw it as an opportunity to prove himself. So what happened in the race? Well, the grid was settled by a short qualifying session that wasn't as close as you might have expected, considering all the drivers were in the same cars. In fact, the top 10 were covered by 1.6 seconds. But Prost was on pole, Reutemann was second, and Senna qualified third. And Lauda only qualified 14th, but he hadn't competed in the practice sessions as he had TV commitments. Now, the TV coverage missed the first 2 laps of the race, but it said that Senna had made his way from third to first by only lap 3. And there was a move, Senna on Prost, that was said to be very, very aggressive, which could have started their fierce rivalry. And Senna was treating the race like he would any other. But some of the drivers at the back weren't taking it all that seriously, cutting corners and pushing each other off the circuit. But towards the front, they were all fighting for a win, especially Lauda, who delivered a masterclass to climb from 14th to 2nd. But no one wanted to win more than Senna, and after 12 laps, he took the checkered flag for a pretty easy win. So, how did Senna manage to win against all of these F1 champions? Well, to do that, let's take a look at his driving. But first, let me tell you about this beautiful thing that we've created. This is no ordinary wallet. It features a strip of genuine carbon fibre from an F1 car, and it's one of only 279. This unique element comes from the wing end plate of Max Verstappen's 2016 RB12, used during his third race for Red Bull at the Canadian Grand Prix. It's absolutely beautiful. We've used the best Italian leather and it's handcrafted in England. And the carbon fibre costs more per gram than gold. So we're now excited to open the pre-sale on our Shopify site. If you haven't heard of Shopify, it's a commerce platform that allows you to start, grow and manage a business. And it's made setting up the online store for our wallet incredibly easy. Thanks to its simple drag and drop store editor, easy to use marketing tools and back office that oversees all of the operations, meaning that I can get back to creating content. Millions of entrepreneurs in over 170 countries use Shopify to power their businesses every day. Plus, Shopify has one of the best converting checkouts on the planet, outperforming the competition by up to 36%. Shopify is powering the next generation of entrepreneurs. So, if that sounds like you can start your free trial today at shopify.com/driver61. That's shopify.com/driver61. And to secure your chance of owning this limited edition piece, register your interest through the link in the description. So, back to Senna's driving. The cool thing about this race was that it was done in only slightly modified road cars. And in road cars, compared to F1 cars, it's much easier to see how the driver is attacking the circuit. When I ran my driver training program for racing drivers, I used Mazda MX-5s because they were relatively soft. And any small mistake in technique that the driver makes is very obvious. With softer suspension, if you turn into a corner too hard or trail brake too much, it compresses a softer spring more than it would do a harder spring. Therefore, it changes the car's balance more as well. And that's why I was so excited when I came across this footage. And we've seen examples of Senna's technique on this channel before, like when he used the throttle like this. And when he gave us a masterclass in heel and toe in his slip-ons. But the first thing that stood out to me was how smooth Senna was driving the car. Just take a look at this footage. It's a complex part of the circuit coming out of a left-hander, braking and moving into a right-hand corner. And when you watch it in slow motion, it's even more impressive. First, just look at how the car is leaning over to the right, compressing the outside springs. Then you see Senna open up the steering wheel and then blend in the brakes. But it's how smoothly and progressively he's doing all of this, all with incredible precision and timing. And finally, he releases the brakes very progressively while turning into the right-hander. Again, all of these inputs, turning, braking and turning again, are blended beautifully. And when a driver's able to blend all of their inputs so well, it means they're using all of the tyre's grip available to them. they're driving to the ultimate limit. And of course, when you're using the optimal amount of grip, you can go through the corner that little bit quicker. On the other hand, many of the other drivers were allowing their cars to go beyond the limit. For example, just take a look at this footage. The driver in question has not controlled the slide very well. They've let the car rotate too much, the car's too sideways, and it's costing them time. And then the car has gripped up before the exit of the corner. The driver's gone beyond the limit of grip, with the rear tyres at least, and then come back under it. This driver isn't as refined as Senna and not utilising the grip anywhere near as well, and therefore he's slower. And being smooth isn't necessarily only about smooth inputs on the steering wheel. We may see very delicate steering inputs in F1 nowadays, but these are basically road cars with much softer suspension. So the car and its body language on the track should look smooth and flowing, but the steering inputs don't necessarily need to be as smooth. Just take a look at the steering correction that Senna makes here. However, the car remains fluid and the momentum is kept, and you can get away with corrections like these to a certain point. But if the correction is too large, typically with opposite lock, then it will cost the driver time. The next thing that stood out to me was Senna's absolute precision. Again, take a look at this footage. Senna's out in the lead and the car looks like it effortlessly slides to the outside of the circuit without using any of the curb. Whereas the car in second runs into the curb and has a bit of a wobble, and the car in third has a big oversteer moment that would have dropped his exit speed and cost him time all the way down the following straight. Even in this footage, you can see that Senna perfectly kisses the apex. Lauda misses it by a few inches, third and fourth miss it slightly, and then the rest are all over the place. And I watched this footage over and over again. Senna is so precise everywhere on the circuit. He's using all of the track, but not too much. And he manages to keep the Mercedes flowing, perfectly balanced throughout each and every lap. And Senna's absolute precision is something that would come up again just a few months after this race, at the 1984 Dallas Grand Prix. Dallas was a street course, and Senna hit the wall in the race. However, he said to his race engineer after the race that the wall itself had moved.
I went with him and we went to the exit of this particular corner, and damn me, it had moved. Someone had hit the sort of trailing edge of one of these blocks, brushed it with a tyre, and it had pivoted slightly. And Ayrton was driving with such precision that, you know, he was probably missing that block by about 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters or something like that, lap after lap. So when it suddenly moved 5 millimeters, because it swung round slightly, he hit it.
So Senna was right, and that goes to show that it has that precision built in. Another reason I think Senna did so well in this race is because he was very good at adapting to different cars and different conditions, something we continue to see throughout his career. Obviously, these Mercedes were very different to the F1 cars of the time, therefore they'd require different braking, different racing lines, and a different feel for how to be fast. That's one of the reasons why I love this race so much. It was so different for the drivers. So not only were the cars identical, but the playing field was level in terms of previous experience. It was a race of skill. How much speed can you extract from this car? And when jumping into a car that none of these drivers were used to, how do you figure out how to be fast? And remember, this was a time before data logging and telemetry analysis. The drivers needed to do everything by feel. And while many of the other drivers were running off the circuit or using too much curb, Senna seemed to make no mistakes. Senna's driving technique sets him up so well to make fewer mistakes. Because he's so smooth, so precise, and just gently leaning into the limit, the car is more predictable for him. Because he has the fundamentals of driving perfected, the car feels easier to drive. He's just more refined with his driving technique. This was an absolute masterclass from Senna, and one that helped put him on the radar of the larger F1 teams. I made a video about Senna's weird blipping technique and why he did it, which you can check out just up here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.